what have you liked so far about Philly's offseason, and do you like or don't like them adding Paul George?
I think it's a win for both sides, right? If you ran it back in Philly, what could you really expect? I mean, Maxey probably could have taken a little bit more of a leap. But then you're really just banking on Joel Embiid being healthy again, which is never a good bet.
Oh.
And that's where this all comes back to, right? I really like what they've done around the edges after this deal. They were able to keep Kelly Oubre Jr., which was a shock to me. They signed Caleb Martin for free, cheap money. Andre Drummond, as well as Eric Gordon. All of these ancillary additions to build around their big three, I think, is more impactful than even adding Paul George in and of itself. Because the thought was Paul George comes in and then who else are they going to get? They're going to turn into the Phoenix Suns again. Well, their role players are significantly better than what they've got going on in Phoenix. So that's the big win of this move, more so than even getting Paul George.
Yeah, they signed Paul George to a big long-term deal, and he's going to be the third best player on that team. He's the third guy. If and when probably Embiid gets hurt and misses some games, he can step up and be a number two guy. I think they would rather give Maxey more of those reins at this point in their careers, but I think that's okay, and it's probably better for Philly's chances to actually go out and win. And they did sign Maxey. He's back on a big extension. As you mentioned, I really like the moves they did. I also brought back Kyle Lowry. They drafted Jared McCain from Duke, who can eventually fill that backup point guard role. Kind of plays a little bit like Tyrese Maxey. Made a ton of win now moves. Flipped the roster upside down for the most part. Health will be the most important thing for this team to compete because they need Embiid healthy for the playoffs. I don't care about Embiid in the regular season. If we're being honest, the Phillies should play him 24 minutes a game in the regular season just so he doesn't get hurt, just so he can be healthy at the end of the year. Like they got to do something. He don't need to be playing 36 minutes a night. He doesn't need to be chasing the MVPs. He needs to be healthy for the playoffs. Take more of a Spurs role, Tim Duncan role with Joel Embiid Philly. But if they're healthy, I think they're contenders and they'll be in the playoffs and they can compete with Boston and New York at the peak of their powers. And another thing I've noticed with these three teams who I think are kind of the top teams in the East at this point, Boston, New York, and Philly, they're all going with three big wings for the most part on their team, right? Philly's going to have Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, Paul George. Boston already has Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. New York's going to have Bridges, Anunoby, and Randall. Like, no, then the little shooting guards are going away. The undersized power forwards you're really not seeing as much either. We're getting a lot of big wings, guys who are 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", and above, who can play both sides of the ball. And honestly, the top of the East after this Philly offseason is going to be really fun to watch.
If you had to pick an order
Mm-hmm.
between those three, where are you slating Philadelphia?
I'm putting them third. If all teams are healthy and playing at their best, I still think, like I said, they compete with those teams. They still compete, but I think they would be the third best.
I agree with you, mostly because it takes a full year for most teams to reach their full potential. Okay. Just ask the 2011 Heat. Okay. When you plug in a Paul George and you kind of completely revamp the roster around a big three, it takes time for everyone to adjust to themselves. New York won't have that issue because they've played together already in college. So that's just like the ultimate chemistry move. And then Boston's already done it. So that's kind of my big thing with Philadelphia. I don't expect them to actually come out of the East. I think they're right at that third spot unless Giannis goes freak mode. But they're behind New York and Boston, and I don't know if it's as close as we think it really is, because Paul George and Joel Embiid both have history of being injured when it matters most. So I don't want to put all my eggs in the Philadelphia basket. They're interesting, and I think this is their best window in Joel Embiid's entire career to actually make noise. It's just unfortunate that Boston's as good as they are.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's wrong to bet on Philly, and I'm not gonna bet on Philly to win or really like do anything, mostly because of Joel and Paul George, his history. But we know who they are. We know who they can be when they're good. And I'm really just excited to see those three teams at the top of the East battle, like you said. Maybe Milwaukee gets kind of frisky in there. Maybe Cleveland figures it out finally. Who knows? But I feel good about Philly kind of entering that like contending status in the East, even if they're not the favorites. Going forward, they do kind of need a win in the next couple years here, though. For being
Oh yeah,
honest,
no, for sure.
looking at Joel's contract, Paul George is only going to get older, and they'll have to decide if they want to keep Joel or not if they're not winning. So
This
it's
is a
kind
2 or
of
3 year play.
yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
they don't have much time to dick around here. So they've got 2 or 3 seasons at most, which, you take the shot. You're going to swing for it. I like that they did it. It's not like I would say if you go back in time, don't sign Paul George. It's just I'm trying to have realistic expectations for Philadelphia.